All right, hi everybody. Welcome to Procom's Live at Lunch for this May sunny day that we have here. I just want to introduce you to our panel. Most of the people here I think you've seen before if you've listened in. Over here we have Hamza. Hamza is an account manager with Procom, has 5 years in the industry, and deals with our clients. So welcome, Hamza. We have Josh Pryor here. He's been on other episodes of Live at Lunch. Josh is a recruiter here with Procom and is looking to give you some tips on how we can network out in the marketplace. Again, you met Hillary. She's joining us as a recruiter here from Procom. And Irene, who has over 10 years of industry experience in recruiting and delivery management. And everyone's here to provide our tips on how you can network out in the industry. So my name is Wendy. If you haven't logged in before to our Live at Lunch, I have 19 years of experience in recruiting and staffing industry. So we're here to provide you sort of our top tips in how you can get out there and network. And one of the first things I just want to say about networking is everybody can do it. It doesn't matter if you're an introvert or an extrovert. There's ways that you can network and get your name out there and use, everybody has friends, family, contacts, ex-colleagues, current colleagues that you can call on for networking. So why don't we just go around the panel and sort of talk about your number one top tip for networking and how you can engage with people out in the marketplace. So Irene, why don't we start and think about your top tip that you would provide a candidate who's either, doesn't actually have to even be somebody who's out looking for a job right now, because I would say networking happens all the time.
Well, if you're a little bit shy and you don't really get around too much, I think what's important is you start first with what's familiar to you. So you can start with relatives and friends that you could approach and just be in touch with them and just make sure that they are aware of your situation and you're also aware of their situation. So it's important to be in touch with these people so that you can communicate with them and you are able to approach them if you would need some help in the future. So I think that's a good network to start with. And also it's good that at first if you identify really the people that matter the most for you to connect with, see how important they are in your life and everything, and what you're able to do for them as well, so that you can ask for their help once you need it at some point.
I think that's a really great point that Irene brings up, is that networking is a two-way street. It's not always like you want to take from your network. You have to also give back to your network. So if you're the person who's always doing the asking, and when you get asked and you don't reciprocate, you really lose the credibility in your network to continue to ask for things. So, I mean, the one thing I would say as part of networking is make sure that when you get requests to help, maybe you can't help, but at least respond and or try to provide some advice or try to put them in contact with another connection that may be able to help. Because if you're always out there being the taker and never the giver, very soon your network is not going to be receptive to your asks and wanting to do any networking with you. Because networking really only works if everybody works together. If everybody's just a taker and no one's giving, networking is really not networking. So, Hamza, why don't you tell us what you think your number one tip is for networking?
Well, I'll sort of elaborate on what you said about taking and giving. A lot of the times when someone reaches out to me, and obviously I work for IT and professional services roles, so if someone, say for example a lawyer, reaches out to me and says, hey, you work in recruitment, is there anything you can do for me? Obviously there's nothing I can do for that person, but instead of just saying, hey, I can't help you, I think about, hey, how many lawyers do I know, or how many people in the legal industry do I know, and then maybe just connect the two of them and or make an introduction, and that way, as you said, Wendy, at some point later on, if I needed to ask for something, they would remember that I helped them out, or I connected them with somebody else.
Yeah.
We have a question over Twitter. What is your best advice for networking over LinkedIn?
LinkedIn. I can talk about LinkedIn.
Sure.
Well, I mean, if the question is regarding, I guess, connecting with people in your industry or in an industry where you want to be, I would recommend doing something called informational interviews, by setting those up. So you connect with somebody, not necessarily when you need to talk to them or when you need to have them do you a favor, but just spend some time, look at people who are in jobs that you'd like to have or in hiring positions. Connect with them and say, hey, I find what you do interesting and I just wanted to connect with you, touch base. And then maybe a week, 2 weeks down the line and say, I was thinking about making a move or something like that, or even I have some questions. Would you like to meet for 15 minutes? I'll be in your neighborhood. Go buy them a coffee and just talk to them without necessarily asking them for something. And then who knows, a month, 2 months, 6 months down the line, when an opportunity arises for them, you'll be top of mind if you are a good fit.
Yeah, I think LinkedIn can be used for networking for different reasons. Obviously, if you're reaching out to a recruiter through LinkedIn, their role is to be networking with people constantly. So connecting with recruiters over LinkedIn is definitely something I would suggest people to do. Build your network with those people because then they know that you're interested in engaging in opportunities. But as Hamza said, reaching out to people in the business world also works. But also don't be offended if they don't connect back to you, because some people are very specific about who they let into their LinkedIn network. Some people keep it very professional, keep it to people that they know. So some people like to get an introduction. So sometimes it's, if you're on LinkedIn and you're noticing that your friend you're connected with somebody who's connected to somebody else, sometimes, you can reach out to that person that you guys have in common and say, hey, do you know so-and-so? How well do you know them? Could you make an introduction? Because I'd be really interested in knowing that person. Because sometimes people who are more particular about their network may not accept you, but they would through a connection of somebody because someone already has vouched for you as somebody that they would want in their network. So LinkedIn, I think, can be used in a couple different ways. Another way to use LinkedIn for networking is to look for groups that you want to join that are applicable to either skills that you have or things of interest for yourself, because you don't necessarily need to be connected to everybody in that group to start having conversations within that group. So you can start discussions and build a network or build connections through the groups within LinkedIn without directly being connected to people. But you can ask questions, start discussions, and then as you start to discuss with somebody, then they'll also recognize your name. So if an invite comes through, you can also reference the fact that you're part of the same group. And again, it's that feeling of belongingness that people may feel more open to accepting your invitation versus out of the complete blue, you send somebody an invite, they don't know who you are, they're very protective about their network, and so they just decline you. So does anyone else have a tip about LinkedIn?
How would you recommend reaching out? Your very first message to somebody, their inbox, how would you phrase it? I think that's what they wanted to know.
Okay, so on LinkedIn, I would reference how I know them, and why I'm reaching out to them. So if I recognize somebody that we were part of the same group, I would say, I wanted to connect with you. I noticed we have similar interests as we're both part of X group. I would like to get to, I'd like to connect with you further. Would you be open to connecting for X reason? If it was through a connection of somebody I knew, I would ask Hamza, and I'd be like, Hamza, you're connected with Courtney. I'd really like to touch base with Courtney for XYZ reasons. Would you feel comfortable passing on my connection request? And then Hamza has the decision to make whether or not he would like to forward it to you, knowing whether or not you would like to connect with me or you're open to those types of things. So then that would be how I would make the ask. I wouldn't but I would put why I want to reach out to you in my invite, so that Hamza understands you're not just looking to build, some people are out there to build this world conglomerate LinkedIn network. And other people are looking to use it truly for networking. So if you're looking at it from a networking perspective, Hamza's more likely, and you give him a good reason why to extend the invitation, he's more likely to do it. If I just say, the generic LinkedIn, I'd like to add you to my network. Hamza may or may not pass on that invitation.
Better to personalize it for sure.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that, as recruiters, we're in LinkedIn every day. I think that's one thing you have to remember is that not everybody lives and breathes in LinkedIn on a daily basis. Not everyone has their email notifications set up to send them hourly updates of things that might be happening, like a recruiter, or someone who's in an active job search. So I think it's also important to know that if you're connecting with Hamza to ask him something and Hamza is your friend and you notice he hasn't actioned it, maybe give him a call and say, hey, you know what, I was hoping that maybe you could do this for me. I sent you a request through LinkedIn. Would you mind logging in? If you notice it hasn't been actioned, because again, not everybody is on LinkedIn all the time. They tend to log in. Some people are like once a month. Some people are once a year. It really depends on how they use the tool in their business. Anything that, Josh, that you can think to add in terms of LinkedIn that?
Yeah, just personalize whatever message you're sending out. I mean, just try not to make your message generic. And again, like, Josh has requested to follow you on LinkedIn. That doesn't tell me anything. It's just, another person reaching out. If you're actively looking, just a quick blurb about what you're looking for, why you want to connect, and I think that really will separate you from the rest of the pack that's just generically reaching out.
Does anyone else have anything, comments on LinkedIn?
I would say I'm a little bit biased because I'm a LinkedIn open networker, so I say connect with everybody, but it's good to connect with other people because you can actually see on LinkedIn, so and so liked this, or somebody so and so commented on this. So if you're connecting with somebody else and that person has commented on a new job that we as recruiters have posted, a new opportunity on LinkedIn that we've advertised, that way it'll pop up on your news feed when somebody else comments or likes on it, and that's all due to networking. That's all due to connecting with new people on LinkedIn.
It's definitely a good way to stay updated as well as to other people's status if they move to a new position, if it's a company that you're interested in, or if it's an area that you're interested in. It's nice to be connected to a lot of these people, and that you're aware of their movements, and so if one of your connections has moved to an area that you're interested in, and then you can go ahead and really approach them, and you have a message for them, like, hey, I noticed that you just moved to so and so. I've been working in this area, or I've been supplying things for this particular industry, and so it would be nice if you could have coffee sometime. So I think that's a good way to stay updated about your connections.
Especially in the technical field, right? Like, it's a lot of the same, groups of people moving to different companies. So if you're in, development, and you see, a former colleague of yours has moved to a bank you wanted to work with, or, a certain industry, you can just shoot them off a quick message and say, hey, are you guys hiring any extra developers right now? And again, it keeps you visible, and you're able to see what their moves are and where they're going, right? So.
Well, I think it's true also if you do move into a job search mode, and as contractors, you are going to move into a job search mode every year, every other year as you change contracts. Deciding where you want to target, and also just looking who in those companies can help just make a short list of people. Like, I haven't reached out to Hamza lately. Maybe I should reach out to him, just put a soft touch out there. Because again, you don't want your first thing when you've reached out to somebody you haven't talked to in 2 years is like, hey, can you get me a job? It's like, hey, Hamza, I noticed you ended up working at XYZ Bank. It looks like you've been there for about a year. How do you like it? Maybe we could meet up for coffee and see how things are at your new job. Very light, reaching out, and then when you meet up for coffee, you're like, hey, you know what? Looks like probably in the next month or so, I'm going to be looking for a new gig. What's going on in your project team? Is there anyone that I can connect with at the bank where maybe I have an opportunity to get in there? Because we have a similar skill set. Your first ask wasn't like right out hardcore ask out to someone you haven't spoken to in a few years. You want to start light, make a reconnection, congratulate them on their new job, and then move into a deeper ask as you move down the conversation.
Yeah.
another question via email. Are there any upcoming networking events that you can recommend?
I mean, I think it really depends on what field you're in. There's always association groups to meet up with. So if you're part of the project manager, if you're a PMP, a project manager, there's always PMI Institute opportunity, like meetups going on, conferences, groups. You can reach out to your local association for that. Same with the IIBA for business analysts. There's meetups, just the meetup group, where you can go online and see what different meetups are going on. To see if you want to be part of that, and there's groups for everything in Meetup.
Like young professionals,
like there's young professionals,
like,
there's
developers,
and it can get down to like a granular like front end developers.
Sure.
They're having a meetup down at a pub downtown, and they're usually people very similar to yourself, all looking to connect with other individuals. Some of those people are working, some of those people are looking for work, some of those people are just looking to hang out and meet new people.
Even if you're on Facebook, if you run a quick like developer meetup search, like in the top, and Toronto maybe, whatever your area is, you're going to find at least one, maybe two or more things that are coming up in the future or events that have already passed, which you can usually click on and click through the event page and see what group ran it. See if they have anything else coming up, maybe, reach out to the event coordinator. And then, again, get yourself on the radar. It's a little bit of proactive searching, but it's a fairly simple search. Even if you're just on Google or LinkedIn or whatever, you can find these groups fairly easily. So.
And I think once you can join the group. Once you've searched the group, the next thing to do is join the group.
I implore you to join the group.
So join the group so that when they do have a new event coming up, you're going to be made aware of it so that you can... And you don't have to join, you don't have to go all the time. Sometimes it's just good, like once you're part of the group, again, you also know who else is part of the group. And that's also a way to open any segue in any conversation is, hey, we're both part of the Facebook Angular group. I noticed like that you're at this telecommunications company. I'm kind of interested in being there. Would you mind, like either connecting at the meetup group and I can ask you a few more questions, and then it's also not creepy. Because also meeting at some of these meetup groups in person, it's also, for people who you may not know in person, but you're part of a similar group, kind of takes a little bit of that weirdness out of it because you're kind of all meeting up at the pub. It's already preset. It's part of a group setting, and then you can just say like, "Hey, I'm going to be there. I'm going to be wearing a red sweater. My name's Josh. So I'll look around for you when I get there." Great. Or here's my number. Like text me when you get there, and we'll try and figure out where each other are at the event. And some of the events are small and casual. Like there's 5 or 10 people there, and some of the events can be like quite large. And there's 50 to 100 people that show up at them. So really depends on the event. But I suggest like if you are part of an association or if there is groups or skill sets that you're part of, try and find those groups on LinkedIn. Try and find local chapters of those groups because those are really good connections. And people who are part of the associations or the groups want to help other people in the group because again, it's like that whole concept of networking, of giving and taking. If I help you this time, the next time when I'm looking for a job, I'm not going to feel bad about reaching out to you when you're the next hiring manager or at a team that I want to be part of because we've now have exchanged information.
Yes, exactly. When you're active in these types of groups, there's also an opportunity for you to be generous to the other people in your network as well. So if you have information, and even if you're not exactly the one who's looking, but when you share that information out, then at least everybody's also connected with you, or you're staying connected with everybody who matters to you as well. And so that's a way for you to share that information, and so they will reciprocate at some point in the future.
Yeah, it's all cyclical, right? So it's like it's a very small group in a very big city, right? So those connections, those good favors, good gestures, anything like that, that'll more than likely down the road come back and pay dividends for you. So.
And if you think about some sites out there, Stack Overflow is probably one of the best networking sites out there in the fact that it really isn't set up to be a networking site. It's meant to be a sharing site. Like, hey, I have this problem. I have this string of code. I can't figure out why it won't work. You post it, people respond, and it in a form, and everybody contributes. Stack Overflow would never work if people posted questions and nobody answered them. So that's how Stack Overflow works. Is here's my problem. A bunch of developers get in there and say, oh, I've done this before. You know what? Change this, change that. Try writing this, and people are like, great, thanks, that worked. If you think even of Wikipedia wouldn't work unless there was people contributing to the source of that, and that's really, if you think about it, networking in its whole is that everybody contributes, and then for the mutual benefit of everybody else. So I think that's probably one of the biggest takeaways that you can take away from today is that you've got to be a giver as well as a taker when it comes to networking.
I don't have any live questions.
So we only kind of really got to Irene and Hamza giving their one top networking tip. So Josh, why don't you give us your number one top networking tip?
I would say always, if you're active on the job market and you're looking, always put yourself out there. And it's as simple as having a simple conversation. Person's a junior Java developer and he's driving Uber to supplement income, and just all these facts about them. And by the end of the conversation, we've exchanged emails, and I've worked with them in the past, and it's a very, very simple networking thing, but you can do it with anybody out in the real world, right? Day-to-day interactions, just go that little extra step. You don't have to be a mega extrovert or anything like that to have these conversations. Just a simple hi, how are you? How's things? And then just follow that string of conversation. What do you do? As soon as you ask what do you do, you're opening a door. And that's a back and forth that you're going to have. And again, who knows? What the other person in the conversation does for a living, where they're going to end up. If I talk to somebody who's database analyst, and I don't run into anybody else, for the rest of my life over my conversations that's a database analyst. I know one database analyst, right? So it's that kind of interaction, just keeping an open door and a flow of communication. You never know where it can end up. So I'd say just on a day-to-day basis, if you are looking, have conversations with people and see what they do, where they are, and it's a give and take.
And then Hillary, do you have one top tip that you can pass out to everybody?
I would just say, just to build on Josh's point, just to follow through and do what you say you're going to do. Because if there's a hiccup in communication and it's like playing telephone, if one person doesn't pass on the information or the contact information or whatever, that's how you disallow your network from building. So if you say you're going to pass on a resume or contact information, follow through and just have that integrity. And as we said before, it's karma. It'll come back to you. And just I'd say follow through would be my number one tip with building your network.
Absolutely. And I think probably the next thing is to not be afraid to say, I really can't help you. But it's if someone asks for help and you really don't have any contacts, or it's just be honest and say, you know what, I would love to help you and I'll put some feelers out there, but I really don't know anybody in that particular space. But then give them you could always come back with, give them a few tips about, have you tried this on LinkedIn? Have you tried that on Facebook? But I really don't have anyone I can personally push you towards. Instead of saying, not responding or just ignoring anything that comes your way. Because again, it's all about building that community and building that network and trying to be helpful. I think is key.
And transparent, I'd say, as well. And
Well, just because we're talking about reaching out to people and getting things moving by talking to different people, and then looking online, seeing what people are doing. At the same time, you have to make sure that your online presence, your professional online presence, should be updated. So upload a nice professional picture of yourself to LinkedIn. It should be recent and clear. A lot of the times, especially if you're looking, you can actually adjust your privacy settings to how much you'd like to allow people to see. So if you'd like people to be viewing your profile and see what you're doing, you can open up your privacy settings and let people in there and see what you're doing. And of course, in order to do that, you have to update almost your resume or whatever details you have about your past and previous employment on LinkedIn. Also add, it's useful to add education information. Because that could also be like a starting point or a conversation starter, saying, hey, you went to such and such college and such school. What year did you graduate? Or do you remember that professor? And so on and so forth. So the more information you put out there for professional reasons, and the better it is for you. So people can find you, people can understand immediately what you're doing when they look at your profile. So you're already 2 steps ahead, or it makes you more visible or searchable.
Yeah, and also for LinkedIn too, just to add to that, the larger you build your network and the more interactions you have with people, the more likely you are to get people to endorse you for a certain skill or write you an endorsement. And the more willing you are to do that for other people, it's going to be a lot easier for them to write you an endorsement back. And it's just little stuff like that. It maybe takes 5 or 10 minutes in a day to write a sincere endorsement for somebody. When you request it back, all those little things kind of add up, and they kind of build your profile, and they build what's perceived about your profile, and it's okay, well, this person must have pretty solid network and clearly pretty reliable and a skilled worker and all that. So we see all of that, and that all goes to our decision in contacting you and reaching out for different roles.
Yeah, or even updating your work status as well on LinkedIn. Open to new opportunities, looking for my next contract. My contract's going to be up, in a few weeks. That helps us as recruiters know, whether or not to approach or whether or not to even refer you to another recruiter for another role that they might be working on. Just keeping your LinkedIn updated is key, because as we said before, we're constantly on LinkedIn every day, and if you just started a 1-year contract, try to update it, your work history, your work experience with that new contract, just so we know.
Being a recruiter myself, related to that, I really appreciate when the consultants stay connected with me. So even though they're not looking for a new position, but they update me about their status. They really email me specifically, hey, I just moved I'm starting a 6-month contract at Manulife, for example, but I'll be available in about so and so months, so I'll be happy to stay in touch with you, and so, things like that. And I think that's an important thing for consultants to remember, to stay in touch with your recruiters. Just let them know about your status, be connected with them, even though you're not necessarily in the market right now, because as being a consultant, you will be in the market definitely in about 6 months or a year or so. And it'll be important that the recruiters remember you as well, and always keep you in mind for those roles that are suitable for you.
And I think Hamza brought up a good point about education, about reflecting on those people that you might know from your school. Join the school alumni groups.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you went to Western or you went to Laurier or you went to U of T, there's hundreds of thousands of people that are alumni in there, and alumni love to help alumni. And if you had somebody that reached out to you and was like, oh, I went to Ivy. If someone reached out to me from Ivy, I would be more willing to, and that's a connection we have. I would be open to that connection. Someone who wants to help somebody who's from their alumni school. It's a way that you can give back. So don't be afraid to join those groups. And you know what? Sometimes it's the guy from high school who was the jokester who's now the CEO somewhere, or a new entrepreneur, or he just got nominated top 30 under 30, and it was the guy in high school you were like, most likely not to go anywhere, and now he's the Josh, was that you?
Look at me now.
But those people are out there, and so joining your old high school groups, joining your university group, if you were part of a post-grad program, everybody has a group to connect the alumni, and I think it's really important to join those groups as well, because there's definitely people in there that can help you down the road and would want to help you because of that connection. Mm-hmm. So, does anyone else have any other tips to share?
Oh.
Any more questions?
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this day for our Facebook Live on how to build out your network. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to update them on Facebook, and we'll get back to you guys with the answers to your questions. And if there's anything else that you'd like to hear our panel talk about next month, please feel free to comment on the Facebook Live on Facebook, and we'd be more than happy to address that conversation. Thanks again for joining us. Goodbye.